Hi, everyone. So I've just opened up the session. So I look forward to seeing people coming in a moment. As you can see, the session's being recorded, so you'll be able to watch it about an hour after the presentation has finished. And in this particular presentation, my second of today, I'm doing three if you didn't realize, is all around podcasting. So I'm going to actually create a podcast live, so no pressure at all. It might all go wrong, but it's the wow factor of doing things live in real time. So I'm hoping that it will obviously work well. You'll see that you have the chat option as per normal. So feel free to let me know where you are. If you're in the UK or you're further afield, that would be fantastic to hear from you and to see what languages you teach as well, if you'd like to share that sort of information, or if you'd like to share what time it is where you are, what the weather's like. As I'm sure you can see, the sun is streaming through my window on the Isle of Wight, which is where I'm based, even though I've got the curtains closed. Otherwise, you can get an issue with sunshine on the screen and I can't see properly. So I've got it's a lovely sunny day here on the Isle of Wight, which of course it always is. As I'm sure everyone knows. And lovely to see Andrea's joining us from Nottingham. That's fantastic. I'm just going to give everyone a couple of minutes to join, just so that we get enough time for everyone to come into the session. And then we'll start promptly at around 12:33 or so. So as you've got a couple of minutes, feel free to make yourself comfortable. Feel free to write in the chat where you're based. It'd be lovely to know if anyone has already started podcasting or why you came along to the session. To me, podcasting is absolutely fantastic in the way that it can promote confidence in speaking. It can improve oracy. It can allow the students to work in small groups, maybe creating a collaborative script, how they can record their voice, how they can publish their work to a real audience. I'll be showing you how you can create a proper podcast using a free tool called Anchor. But of course, if you don't want to actually publish the recordings onto Anchor, you could just publish them somewhere like OneDrive or Google Drive if you prefer. But really, the idea of podcasting is the way in which you can publish to a real audience. I can see, Jean, you put your hand up. Feel free to write in the chat if you have a question or anything like that. But as it is 33 minutes past now, I think we'll make a start, if that's okay. So thank you ever so much, everyone, for coming along. And I really hope that you find the session useful. And if you are interested in podcasting, it will give you lots of ideas on how to get started. So as I said, the idea of this session is for me to create a podcast live in front of everyone. So for those people that don't know me, I've spoken at the Language Show many, many times, I think every year since 2005, including the last 3 years when it's been virtual. My Twitter handle is @JoeDale there. I've now got 34,500 followers, so feel free to follow me if you're not already. Feel free to ask me to retweet any message that you may have, or if you want to tweet live during the session, then you're more than welcome to do so. My email address is joedale@talk21.com as well. Likewise, if you want to email me after the session, then that's fine. I'm going to be sharing the whole presentation with you on the last slide. And as you know, the session is being recorded. So that's fantastic from that point of view. A little bit of background. I was a languages teacher myself for 13 years. I taught French at secondary school level for 3 years and then 10 years at middle school level on the Isle of Wight, which is where I still live. And so at the middle school, I was working with 9 to 13-year-olds. So I've got upper primary and secondary school experience. And for the last 13 years or so, I've been traveling around the world, running training on the use of how technology can enhance language learning, as well as across the curriculum. And I've done training and spoken at conferences in places like Australia, New Zealand, South America, North America, all over Europe, the Middle East, etc. And I've been podcasting since 2006. So I was one of the earliest podcasters. In fact, I think I was probably the first language teacher from England to do an official podcast, which if you want to check out, if you do a search for Node Hill, that's Nodehill, Node Hill, notehillfrench.podomatic.com, notehillfrench.podomatic.com. You'll find the recordings that I did with my students back in 2007, I think it was, if I remember correctly. So let's make a start. This is what we're going to cover in the session, an introduction to podcasting. If you don't know what podcasting is, then it's a little bit like subscribing to your favorite show on Netflix. So you get regular updates of when the latest episodes are out. In a podcasting context, people will publish on maybe a weekly basis or a monthly basis. In an educational podcast context, that's incredibly important. I think that you are consistent, but that you think carefully about how realistically how often you can put out new episodes. So I would recommend going for a monthly podcast if you're talking about the time it would take to put together the content that you would need for your different episodes. So that's what podcasting is. It's normally associated with audio. You can get video podcasting as well, but normally sort of an old school approach is when we talk about podcasts, we're talking about creating audio files, which are ideally of good quality. I think people expect nowadays that the audio that you produce will be of good quality. For not much at all, you can get a good quality microphone, USB, plug it straight into your machine, and away you go. So that's what it is. You then publish it onto a website. In this case, we're going to look at anchor.fm, and then you can subscribe to it on a whole range of different apps, which are called podcatchers, such as Apple Podcasts or my personal favorite, Overcast, which works on iOS. And there's also one called Pocket Cast, which works on iOS and on Android as well. So you can learn on the move. You can listen whenever you have some dead time to a podcast. So I'm going to go through how to record the podcast, how to edit it, how to add music and effects, how to create an episode using the episode builder, and how to publish to a real audience and distribute your show. So no problem at all. We've got plenty of time to do that. And let's make a start. But why podcast? Here are some of the reasons which my friend Rachel Smith gave in a previous presentation that she did around podcasting. Rachel is Langstats Rach on Twitter. She's also at Apple's Distinguished Educator and is now working with Shobi as a learning specialist. She was a languages teacher on the Isle of Man for many years, and she's a real ed tech wizard, and she's also a big fan of the spoken word. So as you can see, Rachel is suggesting, and I agree with all of these ideas, that podcasting is good for improving oracy skills, which is obviously bread and butter for language teachers, increasing student confidence in the way that I've talked about, helping students to organize themselves. You're publishing to a real audience, so that's very motivating. It's a great way of building up the status of the language department as well. I think catering to the local community as well as getting those international listeners, which is always fun. But I think that trying to reach out to the community and encouraging parents and brothers and sisters to listen to the podcast as well is fantastic. It's a great way of representing your community in a positive light. Deadlines is also something which is very important. The whole organization of a podcast, I think, is really essential. Working out the different sections you're going to have and the topics you're going to have, and then making sure that you're going out and recording the audio. You're getting all the right content, that you're getting good takes for each bit of audio as well, so it reduces the editing time, etc. And improving your writing skills in relation to writing a script. I'd always recommend writing a script for, say, an introduction, but in an interview, I think it's a good idea to maybe have bullet points so that it doesn't sound too scripted, but so you know what you're going to talk about, but it still sounds natural. And the most important thing at the end, to have fun. And I think podcasting is a lot of work, but it is a lot of fun at the same time. So how do you get started? Here are some tips and tricks. Thinking of a theme that you're covering in your language lessons, for example, talking about your school life or local area or hobbies. Again, I think podcasting lends itself really nicely from that point of view to an educational podcasting project. I think it's also a good idea to consider maybe having a podcasting club whereby you assign different roles to different students. In other words, the editor, the interviewer, the presenter, etc. Of course, you could all record with your students in an individual classroom, but then you are going to get background noise issues, and maybe it's just going to be a bit tricky to handle and to organize. Whereas if you have dedicated people going out and asking students to record a little bit of audio in a quiet place, ideally in a small room, with carpet so that you get less reflections, you have less space for the sound to bump off the wall. So the worst place to record are places like kitchens, if you've got like a laminate flooring, or bathrooms and places like that. But in a school environment, you can find, a quieter place with maybe soft furnishings like a sofa, for example, or somewhere with carpet will make a big difference to the audio quality. And then, as I've said, working out how frequently you want to publish episodes so it doesn't become an onerous task. Creating a template is a really good tip as well. If you want to add some music, which obviously has to be copyright free, you can maybe ask the music department to produce some original music, and then creating a template whereby you've got the music at the beginning and the end, and maybe you've got an introduction that you use every time, as well as a scripted introduction to introduce that particular show. I think those are all good ideas to save time in the long run. And then in relation to using Anchor, you do have to create a dedicated email address. I wouldn't recommend that you pass that email address on to students, but you get them to send you audio using a tool such as Vocaroo, which we're going to explore in more detail later on in the live part of the session. Writing a script or creating bullet points is a really good idea to structure each section. You don't want it to sound too stilted, but that said, I think that an introduction which is scripted is normally a good idea. But then in the actual conversation part of things, I think that you don't want the students to be reading from a script. You want them to sound natural and a little bit unplanned, if you like, because that's when the magic happens normally. So I'd really encourage you to consider that. As I said, if you can get little bits of music from the music department, which you can include in segues, that's a really nice way of breaking up sections as well. You can use a tool like Vocaroo, which Jennifer Wozniak was showing in the show and tell yesterday. If you haven't heard about it before, it's a free tool which allows you to record audio, and the audio is saved on the servers for up to 1 year. But if you send that to the teacher as a student, then the teacher can then download those voice messages and put them into an Anchor episode. And then recording each section, considering carefully about the different sections that you're going to have, for example, presentation or interviews or reflections. And then you as the teacher being the gatekeeper of all the audio content. You're not asking any students to create accounts, anything like that. You're just asking them to send you a Vocaroo link using the normal ways that you share links with students, be it on Microsoft Teams or Google Classroom, etc. And then you arrange those in Anchor to build an episode. That's the idea. And that's what we're going to try and demonstrate live. So if you haven't heard of Anchor before, it's a completely free podcasting solution. Not only does it allow you to record and edit, but also host the audio as well. It was acquired by Spotify back in February 2019. And the fact that Spotify are the owners of Anchor would suggest that it's not going to suddenly disappear. So if you have done a lot of work creating a podcast, then when things are free, you'd never know whether it's going to suddenly disappear. But the fact that Spotify acquired Anchor in 2019 will suggest that it should be there for the foreseeable future, because of the fact they have invested a lot of money into the platform, and I think it will only go from strength to strength. With Anchor, you can not only, as I said, record, edit, and host, but also you can push the podcast out to popular platforms as well, such as Apple Podcasts and other places, and Spotify. In fact, when you create the podcast, it goes automatically onto Spotify as well. So if you don't want that to happen, in other words, you don't want to publish to a real audience, like a worldwide audience, then you can just take the audio and put it onto, say, somewhere which is more private, like Google Drive or OneDrive. Okay. So let's create a podcast. I'm going to demonstrate how to do this step by step, go through the different elements that you'll need to put something together. And we'll start that in a second. Literally here, what I've done is I've done like a how-to guide, which I'm not going to go through now because I'm just going to do this live for you. But just to let you know, as a reassurance, that I've got a step-by-step guide on how to do this. But you'll get the whole presentation. You'll be able to watch that in real time later on once we've finished. So if I click Exit Slideshow and I go to Anchor, and this is the bit when it gets lots of fun, because I'm going to create a podcast from scratch right now. So what you would do, if you haven't been to anchor.fm before, I'll just put this in the chat for you. I'm not asking you to create one live right now. Just watch what I'm doing. And I'm going to click on the sign up option. like this. Okay, so as you can see here, it says create your account. So I'm just going to put in my name like that. I'm going to put in an email address, and I'm going to use my Gmail account for this. Now, my standard Gmail account is this one, but I've already used this account to create a podcast account. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little Gmail trick, which is the following, which is if you put the cursor just in front of the @ sign and you put a plus icon there, and then you put in a word like, for example, language show, like that, then it will recognize this email address as if it's just my standard Jodel100 Gmail address. So any sort of notifications, anything like that, will go to this address. So it will go to my standard Gmail address. So this email address, in a way, doesn't exist. It will be recognized as the standard Jodel100@gmail.com. So this is a nice little trick for creating different email addresses which just go to the same inbox. And so now I'm going to put in a password like that. Okay. And at this point, I have to put in my date of birth. Okay. So I'm just going to be very honest about this and put the my actual date of birth in, because obviously this is being recorded. So that's all good. There we are. And I'm going to say I'm not a robot as well. And I'm going to click, going to get rid of that and click sign up. And as you can see now, what's going to happen is I'm going to be taken to my dashboard, and it's as simple as that. That's wonderful. Now, another thing that you need to do is you need to, let me just put that out of the way. You need to go to Gmail. In other words, the email address where you created your Anchor account, and confirm the email address, which if I show you like this, and I click confirm email, there we are. So I've just confirmed my email address via the email that I used to register with, and that's all good. So now I can click back to episode. So now we're ready to rock and roll. So I'm just logged in. I'm going to get rid of that one like that, and there we are. Okay, so hopefully that's nice and clear now on how to create an account and how to get started. So let's just go through the different information here. So it says make your first episode. Let's do it. So I click here, and as you can see, this is sort of the default episode builder section. You can record your audio live in the browser. This does work on the iPad that I mentioned earlier. It also works on Android as well, or on Chromebooks. So you can podcast from any device, essentially, as long as you've got an internet connection and a microphone. I would really recommend investing in an external microphone. The one I'm using right now is called the ATR 2100X from Audio Technica, and it's a USB microphone, which means you can just plug it into a laptop, but you can also plug it into an audio interface using the XLR connection, and that's what I've got right now. That's why my audio sounds as it is. But the actual audio interface is called the Vocaster One, which is about £200. And this microphone that I'm using right now is about £90 to £100. You can just use this on its own, but if you use it with an audio interface, then the audio quality sounds slightly better. But you do not have to spend a lot of money on an external microphone. You can obviously just use the internal microphone, but then that will not be as good quality. Okay. You've got the library. That's where all the audio can be saved. You can add music from Spotify, but then when you push the podcast to other platforms, that music will not be there. So I'm not really recommending that. You can add in voice messages, but it does require the people sending you the voice message to have an account. So I'm not recommending that in a school environment. And you can have transitions, which I'm going to show you how that works in a second. So let's click on record. And then the first thing you need to do is make sure that your microphone or your audio interface is selected. So I've got mine selected here. It's called the Vocaster One from Focusrite. There's also this option here called Record Video on Riverside. Riverside is a tool which allows you to record an interview and get local audio. There's also platforms like Zencaster and Squadcast as well, which also let you do this, and Clean Feed. But in the case of Riverside and Squadcast, these are not free tools. You have to pay a monthly subscription. but Zencaster and Clean Feed, there are free options, but you're more limited. But we're not doing an interview here today. We're just going to do single recordings. So let's click record now. And before I do that, I have to think what it is I'm going to say. So here we go. Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Language Show Live podcast in 2022. Okay, so I've just made my little recording. It's processing as we speak. And if I want to change the title, as you can see, it's just put in there by the date. You can click on the little icon there, and I can just call it intro. And there we are. And we're good to go. So now what I'm going to do is click on the plus icon here, add to episode, and that's my introduction. So having done that, what I could do if I wanted to is I could click on the transitions option here. And I could have a quick listen. You can see that you've got a number of different options there. You probably want something that's short and sweet. Let's just try the Elmo Heights one. Okay, let's just try that. So if I click the plus icon, you can see as well that what I can do is I can change the order really easily by just dragging and dropping like this. So I've done that, and now I'm going to click record. And I'm going to record some more. Here we go. In today's podcast, we're going to talk about educational podcasting, in particular in the languages classroom. Are you podcasting in the languages classroom? How do you think it could benefit your students? I'd love to hear your reflections. Okay, so just teed that up for everybody. And in a second, I'm going to show you how you can contribute to this podcast, which will be a lot of fun. So let me click here, and then let's put in opening question. Okay, like that. And I'm going to click the plus icon like that. And that's fantastic. And if I click on the three dots here, you can see that it also gives me the option to edit audio. So if I click on edit audio like this, you can see that you've got a WAV file appearing, or a waveform appearing. And let's imagine I wanted to get rid of some of that section at the beginning. What I can do is I can click here like that, and I can click split. And now it will give me the option, if I want to click on the plus icon here to zoom. Can you see now I just clicked on the zoom option, and now I can see the dustbin. So I click on the dustbin icon and now press play. In today's podcast, we're going to talk. You can hear that I've got rid of that first little bit. So I can do other things as well. I can obviously remove the bits at the beginning, at the end. I can remove bits in between as well. Personally, I would only use this to remove the bits at the beginning and the end. If you want to do more dedicated audio editing, I would recommend using a tool like Audacity, which is free, open source, and is a lot easier, I think, to do basic editing with. But you can use Anchor in this way, just for simple topping and tailing. So this has now come up. It says save as multiple segments, or save as one segment. I'm just going to click save as one segment because that's all the bit that I want. And you can see here that that's now the edited version. So that's all fine. Right. So now I've set it up for everybody to record a few reflections. So what I'm going to do now is click on Vocaroo like this. And I'm going to go to Vocaroo. Okay, and then copy that, and I'm going to put this in the chat for everyone like that. And I'm just going to show you how easy it is to record some audio. So I'm going to imagine myself talking about educational podcasting and how it could be particularly useful in the languages classroom. And I would love someone in a moment to record for me as well and put the link, copy the link. I'll show you how to do that into the chat. Let me just model it first of all. Well, personally, I think that educational podcasting in the languages classroom has huge potential, not only for promoting speaking and listening skills, but also the confidence in speaking for the students. It can help with the scripting of text. It can help with writing as well. That whole idea around collaborating together to produce a final product is wonderful. And I love how podcasting can be published to a real audience. So you've got that motivating factor that literally anyone in the world could download and listen to that podcast and then give you some feedback, but in a safe and moderated way. So if you haven't tried podcasting in languages, I would really recommend that you give it a go. Let's hear from some other people now about their thoughts on podcasting in the languages classroom. Okay, so those are that's just what I've recorded here. I could re-record. I could listen back to what I've done. I can click on the save and share option, and I'm going to click the copy link option here. And then if I wanted to, I could then post this into the chat. I am going to do this right now, just post it into the chat like that, just to show you how that would work. So I want you to do in a second is to record something and post it into the chat as well. While I'm waiting for you to do that, I'm going to click on the download option here. And I'm going to just call it language show like that. Click save. I can then go back to here to my episode builder. And can you see here in Chrome, I'm just literally going to drag and drop it here. Let's just try that again. So I'm going to drop it down here because it needs to be at the bottom. There we are. That's perfect. Can you see? It's all there now. So I'm just now going to give you a little bit of time to record something. It could literally just be one or two of you, just as long as we've got someone who wants to record, that'd be great. So I'm just going to wait now. I'm going to stop talking, and with a bit of luck, we should see a link or two appearing in the chat. Otherwise, it's going to be a very long session. So I'm just going to stop talking now, and then hopefully someone very kind will record something and put it into the chat for me. Really fantastic. Phew. Right. So thank you so much for the one contribution I've had so far. If you want to add another contribution, feel free to do so. Here's the link. There we are. So let's have we've got 5 seconds of pure gold. I'm just going to click download and click save like that. I'm going to go back to the episode builder, and I'm going to drag and drop that into the episode builder. Obviously, I haven't listened to this yet, but I'm sure it's fine and appropriate. And that's fantastic. I've just got one more. That's awesome. So we don't need any more. I just add one more, which is 8 seconds of pure gold. Let's click download here. Save. So you can see how easy it is for you to collect in audio. Another way of doing that is to create a Microsoft form or a Google form, and to make like a short answer box, one for their name, and two for their link to their Vocaroo, and then you've got all the Vocaroo links in one place, and you can then also generate a Google Sheet or a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, and then download them all from there. That's how that one works. So that's all brilliant. Let's have a quick listen.
Hola, I think I would love to do podcasting in my classroom.
Okay, and obviously
I believe podcasting can really help to learn and find out more about cultural differences.
Superb. That's amazing. Now, obviously, I could edit out that bit at the beginning from this one, but it's all good. So let's add a bit more audio, and let's go for it. Okay, so thank you so much for those fantastic reflections on the power of podcasting in languages. If you haven't had an appetite already for podcasting, then maybe these reflections will give you that push to get started with podcasting, because I genuinely think, hand on heart, it's a wonderful thing to do with your language students for all the reasons that I've talked about. Great stuff, everyone. Thank you. Okay. And you can also hear the authenticity in people's voices as well in podcasting. That's another reason why I really like it. In this sort of era of fake news, podcasting is something which cuts through all of that with authenticity, because it's very clear, I think, if people are not being authentic when they are recording their voice. So if you click on the plus icon, then there we are. Let's put it right at the end. So I could rename that one as well. I could call this one summary. Okay. Let's have a bit more music. So let's click on the transition option again. And this time, let's go for something else. Okay, it's a bit naff, but you get the idea. So let's add that as well. That's perfect. And I'm just now going to record a little outro. And here we go. Well, thank you ever so much, everybody, for listening to this inaugural episode of the Language Show Live podcast, recorded live during the Language Show presentation by independent languages consultant Joe Dale from the UK on the 12th of November 2022, talking all about podcasting and the power of podcasting in the languages classroom. I'm very grateful to all the reflections and contributions that we've had, and I really hope that when you listen back to this recording and you watch the webinar back, that it gives you some ideas on how to get started to replicate what we've done here, but to do podcasting with your own students. And I would love to hear from you how you're getting on with that, because I genuinely believe that podcasting is wonderful for the languages classroom. Thanks ever so much for listening, everyone, and happy podcasting. There we are. So I've just done that there. I'm going to wait for that to process. And once I've done that, click the plus icon. Like that. I'm just going to wait for it to process. I just want to show you another little thing that you can do as well. Is you'll notice next to each of the other contributions here, there's a little music icon. So if I click on that, I can add some background music. Let's go for calm, and then let's have a little listen. Yeah, that's quite nice. So let's go for that one. And then here you can adjust the volume of the music. So let's have it sort of in the background like that. Hopefully that should be okay. I'm doing this live because obviously if I had a bit more time, I would take a bit more time over making sure it was the right volume levels. But once that's finished processing, I'll be able to add it to the episode, and then we'll be ready to publish, which is very, very exciting. And we've still got lots of time, so that's all good. So having published the there we are. Can you see now? Can you see it's got a little musical note top left? Having published the episode, we can then sort out things like the artwork and things like that. But we now have the whole episode there. In a real situation, I would obviously preview it, but let's imagine that's all fine. I think it's all fine. So let's click Save Episode. Okay, so at this point, we're going to go for the episode title. So we need to come up with a title. I normally would recommend that you put in numbers to begin with, like this, 001, for example. And then we could say the power of educational podcasting in the languages classroom, for example. Episode description. This episode was recorded live during the language show live on the 12th of November 2022. Okay, that's all good. I can then go down here, publish date. You can schedule the date to another time, or you can just go for it and publish it live, which is what I'm going to do. You can do these other things. I've never really played with this idea of adding polls and Q&A. At the bottom here, you can do things like season number. So let's put season number 1, episode number 1, episode type full. It's a nice idea to start off with a trailer actually as well, and then submit your podcast to lots of different directories, but Anchor can simplify that for you as well. Today, obviously, we're going to make sure it's clean content. You can see here, you could put explicit as well, but obviously in an educational content, then that would not be appropriate at all. The episode art, we'll look at that in a second. That's all good. So let's click next. Okay. Now, this is the really important bit in relation to the name of the podcast. So we're going to call it Language Show Live. Okay. Podcast description. This podcast was recorded live at the Language Show on the 12th November 2022 by independent languages consultants, Joe Dale. Okay, something like that. That's all good. Podcast category. Let's go for education. Podcast language. Obviously, that's particularly important for if you're going to make a podcast in the target language. I'm just going to stick with English for right now and then click continue. And then here it says search for a photo, upload an image, choose one for me. So let's go for search for a photo. This has then come up. You get all these different sort of different options. I just normally go for like not a dark background. That's normally good. It's important to have contrast between the background and the text. You can do this sort of thing and zoom in and zoom out if you want to. All these images have been taken from Unsplash. Please make sure that you make your cover art with royalty-free images. There we are. You can choose the font here as per normal, and then it should. There we are. Can you see it's saying language show live? That's lovely. I'm going to change the color to black so you can see it properly. Clearly, I would make I would take a lot more time over this if I was doing this for real. I would recommend getting rid of that little anchor icon there, but that's all fine as we see. Update cover art like that. That should then appear on the podcast, and we should then be ready to go live, which is amazing. There we are, published. So we're ready to publish. So we've done that now, and it says continue. That's amazing. So we've done all of that. That's lovely. And you can see here that it says anchor.fm like that. And that's the Spotify link as well. You can also here, you can see it says enable RSS feed. An RSS feed stands for really simple syndication. And you can use that to add your podcast to different directories. Anchor does allow you to do that automatically, but I personally prefer adding an RSS feed manually, and I've given in the presentation I've got a link to instructions on how to do that. So let's just click enable. There we are. It's now enabled that, which is lovely. And here it goes on how to add the feed. It gives different instructions on how to add to the different popular directories as well. So that's all done like that. The last thing I wanted to do is click the settings option. And if we go to update settings, we can actually customize the link, which is here. Can you see here? It says your custom URL. So I clicked on update settings. You go down to your custom URL, and we're not going to call it Joe-Dale 59. We're going to call it language show live like that instead. And that means that when I save here, you've got some other things like you can add to your Twitter accounts and things like that. You can also delete the account if you decide that you don't want to use the podcast anymore, then that's all good. And right at the top, you must remember to click save. So I've done that now. That's all good. And we're now ready to see the episode live. So if I go to up to here and go to here, and we go to here, as you can see, it's now available. Let me click on, let me just go to a new page actually, and go to anchor.fm/language show live like that. And then what should happen? There we are. There it is. So you can see here it says message. If you were to click on that, it would ask you to log in to send a message. So I think the Vocaroo option is much better. You've also got the option to listen on Spotify, or you can listen here. If you were to click on this, it would take you to Spotify, and you can listen to it live on Spotify. But for now, let's just to finish off with, let's have a listen to our inaugural episode. Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Language Show Live podcast in 2022. In today's podcast, we're going to talk about educational podcasting, in particular in the languages classroom. Are you podcasting in the languages classroom? How do you think it could benefit your students? I'd love to hear your reflections. Well, personally, I think that educational podcasting in the languages classroom has huge potential, not only for promoting speaking and listening skills, but also the confidence in speaking for the students. It can help with the scripting of text. It can help with writing as well. That whole idea around collaborating together to produce a final product is wonderful. And I love how podcasting can be published to a real audience. So you've got that motivating factor that literally anyone in the world could download and listen to that podcast and then give you some feedback, but in a safe and moderated way. So if you haven't tried podcasting in languages, I would really recommend that you give it a go. Let's hear from some other people now about their thoughts on podcasting in the languages classroom.
Hola, I think I would love to use podcasting in my classroom.
I believe podcasting can really help to learn and find out more about cultural differences.
Thank you so much for those fantastic reflections on the power of podcasting in languages. If you haven't had an appetite already for podcasting, then maybe these reflections will give you that push to get started with podcasting, because I genuinely think, hand on heart, it's a wonderful thing to do with your language students for all the reasons that I've talked about. Great stuff, everyone. Thank you. Thank you ever so much, everybody, for listening to this inaugural episode of the Language Show Live podcast, recorded live during the Language Show presentation by independent languages consultant Joe Dale from the UK on the 12th of November 2022, talking all about podcasting and the power of podcasting in the languages classroom. I'm very grateful to all the reflections and contributions that we've had, and I really hope that when you listen back to this recording and you watch the webinar back, that it gives you some ideas on how to get started to replicate what we've done here, but to do podcasting with your own students. And I would love to hear from you how you're getting on with that, because I genuinely believe that podcasting is wonderful for the languages classroom. Thanks ever so much for listening, everyone, and happy podcasting. There we are. Okay, so I'll just finish off the presentation just by running very quickly through the slides. This is literally just a step-by-step on what we've done, but this is on the iPad version, which is very similar to the desktop version, just to give you an idea of how that works. While I'm doing this, I can answer the questions around how what do you do if you want to have your podcast as private. So you wouldn't use Anchor.fm if you don't want to be publishing to a real audience. You would just take the audio that you've recorded. You could then download it as an episode and then put it onto, say, somewhere like Google Drive or OneDrive instead. So you could use the different tools that I've shown you already in Anchor, or you could do something similar using Audacity for recording an audio podcast in that way. This is an article which was created by a guy called Steve Stewart, who's a podcasting legend around the different popular directories where you can submit your podcast once you've got that RSS feed that I showed you how to enable. And also, if you're interested, here are 18 example sessions of different ideas on teaching language using technology, which I put together either in a remote teaching context, a hybrid context, or a face-to-face context. So feel free to get in touch if you'd be interested in asking me to do a face-to-face training session or a series of online sessions or a one-off webinar. I'd love to hear from you. And you may have seen as well that I've been collaborating with Esmeralda Salgado recently. We've done 2 sessions already on different skills. The first one was on listening, the second one on reading. We've got one coming up on the 23rd of November, which is on writing, and then the last one will be on speaking. You can pay to attend live, or you can purchase the recordings as well if you're interested. And that will be carrying on until the last one, which I think is the 7th of December. So if you feel like learning from Esmeralda and myself, each session is an hour and a half long, and we would love to see you there. And to finish off with, here's the presentation, which I will put in the chat for you as well. So you'll have everything. It's is.gd/language show podcasting. And thank you ever so much for everyone's contributions, particularly those people that added the audio contribution in the chat for me via Vocaroo. That was amazing. And I can see I've got a couple of questions in the Q&A, which is the following pod nerd question. I've not hosted on Anchor before and heard they don't distribute to Apple or give you an RSS feed. Has that been your experience too? So I've just demonstrated how you can enable the RSS feed and how you can distribute it to Apple. My understanding is it does push it out to Apple automatically, but you can always go through and add it manually. And I can see you've written nerdy question answered. Cheers. Okay, so that's all good. Yeah, if you have any nerdy questions around podcasting, do get in touch. I'm really, really passionate about podcasting, and I'd love to answer any questions. Or if you would like me to help with podcasting as well, I also run a podcasting masterclass, which is 5 sessions long. And I've done that online. I did that online in June. But if you want to me to run that either on an online version, either individually or as part of the department or as a school, let me know. And that obviously could be cross-curricular as well as language specific if you'd like it to be. So thank you ever so much, everyone. I really hope that you find the rest of the language show useful. I'm doing another session at 2:00, but I'm going to have something to eat now. And the one at 2:00 is on Chrome extensions, useful Chrome extensions for language teachers. So thank you so much. Oh, and you just asked me about the microphone. So the external microphone that I'm using is called the ATR 2100X by Audio Technica. And the audio interface I'm using is called the Vocaster One. But you don't need to use the audio interface. You can just use this microphone and plug it in USB and you'll be good to go. So I'm here to help. If you want any more help around podcasting or anything to do with technology and languages, just let me know. And I'm going to stop sharing right now. And I'm going to end the session. And I've only gone 1 minute over, so it's not too bad at all. So take care, everyone. And thanks ever so much for all your kind comments as well. I really appreciate it. And you'll be able to watch the recording in about an hour's time. And check out the podcast on Spotify as well as on Anchor as well. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.